Hey everybody, welcome to the Order of Velvet Bite. Just a little square here beside me. You can see the website. Just reminding everybody, melissadonharris.com. Everything, all the links, the recent shows, the socials, I put Loyalty Club. That's essentially Patreon, and everything can show you the latest Substacks. I know we haven't had a Substack for a while, like a written one, but I will get one up. I have just been very busy. Today's show, we are going to be talking about, we're going to be connecting Romania with Appalachia a lot. We're going to talk about the Appalachian Vampire, and we're going to talk about Romania and a news story out of there. There is a young man missing in the Dracula Castle area by the Carpathian Mountains. So we're going to talk about that story. Before I get into that, I hadn't mentioned this earlier because I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know if I was going to cry or not or get upset. But in in October, a friend of mine on Facebook, his son went missing. And I don't know all the details of this case. I will say what's public and what I know to be true. They determined at some point that his son was indeed deceased. They had arrested some people and they were looking for the body. My friend is from a native Indigenous tribe in Northern Ontario in Canada, and his son is Mackay Waters Peely Scott. Mackay Peely. And he's about a year older than my son. He reminds me a lot of my son. And he went missing. And they were out on a search for his body. His father has been out on a search every single day to locate his body. And what they found was they arrested two suspects. One of the suspects, they charged them for desecration of a body. So what they had found out is that they figured what they did was they murdered Mackay, and he knew them. They plotted it and lured him in, and then they burnt the body, of course, to hide it, and then threw away the remains. And Unfortunately, his part of him has been located. The two legs, the two arms, and the skull has been located. And I try not to cry. I didn't think I would cry on this one. So I just want to give a little prayer out for Mackay Peely and his father, Brian, who is still looking in their tradition, in their native tradition. It is important for them to recover the whole body to have the funeral. So they have found part, and it's a real mess of a story. These people who did it, they knew, and they trusted, they befriended them. He was a real outgoing young native boy who was like really caring person for his family. Double dimples, just like my son. Yes, it did. It happened in Canada. It happened in a place called Kenora, Ontario, Northern Ontario, rough area. And they're still looking. They're still looking for the rest of his body, for their traditions. And it's been so traumatic for the family. He was just a young boy starting his life out, good-looking kid. And now what made me so devastated, and I cried for like a couple of days, where I couldn't stop crying, is that, you can't get that back. And they're taking something so precious that God gives to us that nobody has a right to take. And so, yeah, I want to give a prayer to the family and a prayer to Mackay. They have located it, and these people are definitely being charged with first-degree murder. What is so heinous is that the second person who was arrested was the murderer's mother, who is 43 years old. She was a vice principal or some kind of teacher at the school, and she's been arrested for helping him basically conceal a crime. And the young man who was arrested, his name is Terrence Cherry. He's arrested first-degree murder, desecration of a body, and Una Cherry has been arrested a few weeks ago for aiding in, I guess, covering it up. Her family's trying to raise money for bail at the hearing. I don't think these people should be able to make bail. Like, this is insane. So it's Mekhi Mackay Peely Scott, or Mackay Scott Peely, however they do it. And his father is Brian. And I just want to say a prayer for them. It's just been weighing on my heart really heavy for a long time. I'm trying not to cry. So, yeah, I hope they have the closure that they need and they find the rest of Mackay. And that in their tradition, they communicate with, the beyond. And they are in communication with his spirit and using that to locate the rest of the body. And his dad's not going to stop till they have everything that they believe gives him peace and sends him off to their creator. So, condolences and rest in peace, Mackay. And prayers for your family to get through this really traumatizing time. So that is what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that and put that out to the world, and maybe everybody give a little prayer for Brian Peely and his family at this time, which is rough. I wouldn't. This is something I wouldn't be here. I'd be in an insane asylum, or I'd be trying to kill the suckers if someone did that to my son. I don't think I'd be in one piece. That's for sure. So, I promised someone who was a watcher of the show that I would share some books on remote viewing. They were asking stuff, and we talked about Edgar Cayce. My husband has 2 really good books on it. Remote Viewing Secrets, The Handbook for Developing and Extending Your Psychic Abilities by Joseph McGonigal. I've got to go through this, but apparently this guy is the bomb for remote viewing, Joseph McGonigal. And then he's got another book called Mind Trek. Apparently these are 2 of the best ones. Remote viewing is the ability to perceive and describe detailed information about a remote place, person, or thing, regardless of the normal boundaries of time and space. I don't know, maybe this is something that I should look at. We did this thing called Psyche in terms of that. So tapping things out for the body. But these are the books: Mind Trek and Remote Viewing Secrets by Joseph McGonigal. Yeah. Thank you for the prayers, Pyramid 7. A lot of I wish I could go up there and help look, like I wish I could, but obviously it's way far north in Canada. So, and they're fighting off the weather. They're fighting off like the storms. And on a positive side, a really interesting side to this murder of my friend's son, while he was out searching, is wiping a tear away, sorry. While he was out searching, he found a wounded eagle. This wounded eagle just came out of nowhere, and he rescued the wounded eagle. And he's been nursing it back to health, and he's named the eagle Mackay. And so in their tradition, they believe that oftentimes a spirit of an animal that will be in an animal, and the animal will, after a loss, maybe of a chief or someone important in your family, then an animal will show up, like a spirit guide or an animal guide that will show up that's the form of your son. And so I find that really interesting that all of a sudden this eagle just shows up, and he has it in his house now, and he's nursing it back to health, I think. So very interesting, because it's a very important part of their culture. All right. Who's in the room today? Sorry to start off so heavy, but I had to say that and get off my chest. And I just would love prayers for him. We got Genocide in the room, and we got John Connor in the room. Kirby, thank you. Thank you very much. John Connor says, I am sure you will mention that before the continental drift, Appalachian Mountains and the Carpathian were the same mountain structure. I was indeed going to mention that, but you did. Just like where I was from in New Brunswick, originally where I was born, I didn't live most of my life in there in Canada, is very similar to, in Newfoundland, it's very similar to areas in England and Ireland that are on the coast. So very, very interesting. And we will get into that. We're going to cover the news first, though. We've got Matthew Kirshner in. Good to see you, Matthew. And we got Pyramid 7. Yes, good stuff. Thank you, John Aside, for the prayers. I just, I'm going to be honest about that. I was worried when I heard he was missing right away. I had bad feelings. And then when I started to get into the story and I looked at my friend's site and I seen his son, it's almost like he connected with me and said something through my son, like, because there was just some energy in the double dimples and the round face that just reminded me so much of my son that I literally cried for a whole day, like uncontrollably. It was like my husband, like, just like, I think he felt really bad that I was crying so much. Speaking of my husband, hello, incognito. But the positive thing is I'm glad that Brian has this faith and the tradition in the Native family and a massive support system, but it still is a horrible, horrible pain that you have to, that your 21-year-old is now just a pile of bones because of evil, evil people who are psychopaths. And Canada, if you want to do something right for once, give these people a jail sentence so they never leave and hurt anybody else. It's a minimal you can do. Stop humanizing psychopaths. Anyways, we're going to pop to a scene and we're going to talk about this curious case. And let's switch this out. That's the website. Of course, you can go there and subscribe, and make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel naturally, and thumbs up this video. We have got a really strange story, and it leaves me feeling kind of disturbed the way I felt about Mackay, because this is not a good sign. This is taking place in Romania, and it's a British student. It's mimicking. It's so odd how sometimes life mimics art, but it's a British student who has gone missing. He went on a solo hike in Romania in the mountains. His final call was to emergency services, saying he was suffering from hypothermia and exhaustion. George Smith, 18, was last heard from on November 23rd while hiking through the dense forest of Romania's Busegi Mountains, I probably butchered that, and heading towards the village of Braun, home to Braun Castle, widely associated, but wrongly, with the Dracula legends, the Times reported. While trekking alone, the University of Bristol student made a distress call to a mountain rescue, frantically telling operators that he was exhausted, hypothermic, and unsure of his location. Despite days of searching, rescuers were unable to locate him, only discovering his rucksack with supplies in the area where he had phoned for help. The teen mother's Jo Smith described her son as a sporty and strong young man who is known to travel a lot with families and friends, but said this trip was different. He left his university in the United Kingdom on Sunday without telling us to go hiking alone. That's really odd. His phone's last signal, it was in the remote area. He made a distressing call to 112, which is Romania's emergency line, 112, on Sunday evening. I flew to Romania immediately, and we are trying to support the search teams the best we can. Rescue teams believe the teen started his hike from the resort town of Poiana Brasov and ended up roughly 10 to 15 miles away in the Tiganesti Valley when he called for help. They are connected by extensive forest trails that ascend sharply into alpine areas, which become hazardous when temperatures drop. Since his disappearance, search crews have faced constant setbacks due to severe weather and heavy snow. This does not look like a very good outcome. My heart is breaking for these people as well. We have a little clip and video about it. I love my TikTok. Is this it here? We're gonna give you a little glimpse, few seconds glimpse of what it's like in Romania in some of these forested areas. So just check this out here. So that is it. I mean, it's gorgeous, but people don't go hiking and on these adventures on your own without telling. It seems weird that he wouldn't tell his family. That's what he did. We got another little clip and video here. And they're going to go, they might do a little more details. Let's see here. We got it.
Dracula's castle. George left the resort town of Poiana Brasov on the 23rd of November 2025, planning to hike alone toward Brand Castle in the Castle Mountains. That evening, he called Romania's emergency hotline asking for help. He said he was exhausted, freezing, and had been forced to step inside the castle grounds to rest for a moment. It was the last time anyone heard from him. Rescue teams later found his backpack at the entrance of Brand Castle. Inside were a sleeping bag, a tent, and scattered food. There were no footprints, no phone, and no trace of George himself. Local search organization Salvament Brajov launched a full mountain rescue operation. Helicopters, drones with thermal imaging, search dogs, and ground teams have been deployed across the forest and the steep terrain around the castle. Progress has been slow. Heavy snow, freezing temperatures, and the rugged landscape continue to block search teams. Authorities say there is still no explanation for how he disappeared so quickly after his distress call. The question remains, why did George Smythe walk into Dracula's castle, and why did he vanish after stepping inside? An 18-year-old...
Okay, he didn't exactly vanish stepping inside of the castle. Obviously, it's weird. It is a weird case, but you know those missing 411 cases you see all the time? Where people want to know why he vanished, but people, when they get hypothermia, they start doing weird things and they hear weird voices and they start hallucinating. So strange things can happen when you go out into these areas, in these woods. You get disorientated. You know, why would he do that track and then disappear? There has been the strangest 411 calls. And when people went to recover things, like just boots and pants were sitting there and the person was gone and they were sitting in upright position. It's like they just disappeared and walked away naked. And people do strange things when they're in these conditions. It is really bizarre. And Eric Joseph, welcome. I don't know if it was you, Eric, that asked about the remote viewing book, but this is Remote Viewing Secrets by Joseph McGonigal. And then he has another book, Joseph McGonigal, called Mind Trek. If it's you that asked about the remote viewing, I think it might have been, but this is it. This is the guy that does the good remote viewing books. It's pretty logical, remote viewing. There's a pretty logical approach. I don't think you even have to get too new agey or mystical, to be honest with you. So yeah, that is so strange. And as we were talking about in the comments earlier, John Connor mentioned there is a big tie to the Carpathians and the Appalachian Mountains. I don't know if you say, some people say Appalachian, some people say Appalachian. I'll say Appalachian, Appalachia. You guys probably in America know where that is, but there's a connection because when we had like Pangaea, I think it's called, when all the continents were connected, and then they split, right? And so you notice that some of the terrains are very similar. So like I was saying earlier, where I was born in New Brunswick has a similar terrain to places in like Dover in England or Bristol. They have a similar landscape. And Appalachia has a similar landscape to that of Romania. And so Appalachia is the vast, diverse cultural and geographical region in the eastern US defined by the Appalachian Mountains, which stretch from New York down to Mississippi. Some of it actually goes up into Brunswick, but not very much. It's not really mountains. There's a part of it that starts there, but it's really from New York to Mississippi. It encompasses 13 different states. European, it's known for its mountain culture, rich history, European settlers, indigenous people, mining, strong community ties, and various landscapes. Let's have a peek just to let you guys know here. Most Americans already know. We'll share this here. This is the area that we're going to be talking about because we might have some people who are not American and don't know what area that I'm talking about, but this area in red here, West Virginia is one of the states that is fully, like it has right here, fully Appalachian Mountains. It's just surrounded by them. I was actually looking at West Virginia and whether or not it should move, but this is the area here. And it very much ties into the Carpathians. And if you know, the Carpathians are like a horseshoe shape. They come down, they go all the way from Ukraine and they come down and they horseshoe shape in this area in Romania. And so they stretch down Europe. And they are gorgeous but dangerous. Gorgeous but dangerous. Genocide. I'm guessing he didn't have matches with him to start a fire. Maybe he did, but a lot of his gear wasn't with him. He left it in the hotel. And even if he did, like sometimes when you get hypothermia, you just don't make any sense. You don't do anything logical and you start hallucinating. So that's really dangerous. Genocide says the Appalachian Mountains were part of the Scottish Highlands before the split. Interesting. So there's part of them that were up there. Well, here's the gist. A lot of the people that were coming from Europe would often go to areas of America that reminded them of where they came from. So there was a lot of Scottish settlers in the Appalachian area, but there was also a lot of Eastern European and Romanian settlers that I believe they came from about 1890 to 1920. And so just like when the Irish came over to North America in places like New York and the east coast of Canada, and they bring their customs like Halloween and Celtic, superstitions or stories and folklore, they bring that with them. So too did the Eastern Europeans and Romanians. So you have some kind of vampire. You get a type of vampire lore. I had an article about it here. Let's see if I can find it because they're talking about just that. Oh, yeah. The Martins from Transylvania to West Virginia. It's the Transylvanian West Virginian vampire, you guys. All right. This is at AppalachianHistory.net. You can check it out. They got oral histories. They do it by state, but this one is from West Virginia. So it is talking about this man who has moved basically. It's telling you the Carpathian mountain range that encircles the region reaches an altitude of 8,000 feet, while the central plateau is around 1,200 feet. Several ethnic groups live there. In 1919, the largest groups were Romanians at 1.5 million, the Magyars or the Hungarians at 920,000, and Germans and Saxons at about 234,000. Some parts of Transylvania were still ethnically and linguistically mixed, but villages tend to be mostly one ethnic group. Okay. So Economic changes in the late 1800s and early 1900s spurred a massive outmigration from Transylvania. Like most of Central Europe, Transylvania's economy depended on the production of grains. But because of its mountainous terrain, only 30% of the land was under cultivation, and farmers' yields of corn and wheat were far lower per acre than the rest of Hungary. So industrialists saw an opportunity in the region, and in 1870 they built the first rail line to the district of Hanyad, known for coal reserves. So by 1912, more than 2,000 kilometers of railroad crisscrossed through the region, connecting the hinterland with the Kosovar and the Kosovar with major cities. So while Transylvania remained agricultural, economic changes in the rest of the empire created new opportunities. So people started migrating. They mechanized farming. People started to go to look to find better wages, working conditions, because some of their jobs were just evaporated as well. So in 1919, British report observed Hungary is a country of low wages. About 2.3 million left the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which does not exist anymore. From 1899 to 1930, and one study found that in 1905, only 1% of the migrants were miners, compared to 52% who were agricultural. That's why they bring a lot of these people to Canada, because they needed the agricultural skills, and a lot of them were. Hungarians came to dominate the workforces in some mines. The case was the Y&O mine, and that was owned by Youngston in Ohio, and from Beach Bottom, West Virginia. So a lot of them started to come to the mountain ranges. I suppose they were familiar with mountain ranges. We have a comment here saying, my family were from Scotland and settled in the Appalachians in the early 1700s. So that's fantastic. So part of my family, they were from England, Ireland, Scotland. That you could probably trace a lot of us back to some of these royal families too. They were actually from a wealthy family, and when they came over, they were in America. And I believe New Hampshire and Maine was their hub. And then with the Civil War, not the Civil War, the American Revolution, a lot of them moved up to New Brunswick. So it would have been in the 1700s as well, but maybe a little later in the century. So they've been there for a while. My father is from Croatia, not Romania, and he immigrated probably in the 70s. You know, they were trying to escape a lot of political upheaval then. I'll put it at that. So we got some registration cards showing people immigrating in. They talk about how in West Virginia, it was pretty hard work conditions. If you go to those coal mines, you see a lot of these haulers, as they call them, hollows, where people live. And there's a lot of poverty in that area, and there still is a lot of poverty in West Virginia compared to other states. Yeah. And so this article, I'll pop it in. You guys can read it, but it's just talking. I don't want to get too history snobby here, but it's just really talking about the actual factual history. So you can see that these people are coming over looking for working conditions, but of course they're recruiting them for coal mining. And coal mining had started to become a factor in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but a lot of the displaced people were probably farmers, agricultural. So there we have that. Now to the spooky part. Not only do we have Count Dracula, which is a later creation from a British myth, but so not only does Eastern Europe have a spooky history of vampire lore. No, yeah, sorry, I'm just reading the comment there. Yeah. So, anyways, not only does Romania have that spooky vampire lore, but it's ancient and it's old. So now you're bringing that stuff over to the new world, and it's never going to be the same. You're never going to have it, be Romania. It's going to be a whole lore and study of its own. So first we're going to get into a video that talks about kind of some tricks and trades of ghosts, and then we're going to get into what an actual vampire looked like in Appalachia. And I don't think it's the same as a vampire necessarily in the old world, as they used to call it in Eastern Europe. I think they have some interesting beliefs, but if you ever go into Appalachian areas, they have some superstitious rules, but I think some of the superstitions are based on some real life threats. Like when you hear people say, if you hear a woman screaming in the woods, don't go, don't go looking for the woman. It's because it could be like a cougar. Like some of these animals, they will scream and sound like a human, kind of trick you. So you go looking for it, and you're going to find a predator, right? Like there's some logic, but there's some that there's just not a lot of logic. You're like, what's going on? Um, Now here's this. He talks about a vampire, but he also talks about Appalachian folklore and some of the things they believe. And then we'll get into talking about the Appalachian vampire.
This is why you close your curtains if you live in the mountains of Appalachia. If you hear something, no you didn't. If someone calls your name, you don't answer back. If you hear whistling, you never whistle. And if you're from the Appalachian region like I am, you know a lot of people believe this wholeheartedly. And the origin of this actually goes all the way back to Native American culture. Many of them, the Cherokee, especially in the Smoky Mountain area up to the region where I'm at, the Cherokee was prominent in that area. But they believe that at nighttime in the mountains, spirits came alive. They pretty much have free range to roam at night. That's why some people make sure after dark their curtains are closed, their blinds are pulled, and you never look outside. I've heard reports of people who have been out in the mountains hunting or hiking, different things, and they've heard people call their name. And when they have actually answered back, it hasn't ended well. Growing up in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, I have never heard anyone call my name, but I've heard some pretty strange stuff. And if you're from this region, you know these mountains, they're no joke. I'm comfortable in them, but I have a lot of respect for them. Just keep in mind, on your next visit through the Appalachians, keep your curtains closed, keep your blinds pulled, and whatever you do, don't look outside. And if you hear something, no you didn't. Have a great day.
You hear something? No, you didn't. You gotta be careful, because if somebody calls your name, there's this belief that you could, I don't think an animal will call your name, but it could be some kind of haint, some kind of evil, wicked lady ready to get you. They have a haint ghost that they believe in the Appalachian. I believe they call it a haint. It's for a haunting. But we're going to do the TikTok. I'm going to make sure I have the proper video, because we're going to talk about this vampires in Appalachia in a minute. We had one where the girl said she experienced something, but it was like 10 minutes long. And I was like, I don't know if we want to hear that. I want a shorter version here. But there is... Yeah, well, we got a small one, and then we'll have a long one. But I like going through these because these guys tell the tale far better. I'm not Appalachian. I might actually try to get someone on to talk about Appalachian folklore, because I'm not from there. I want to go. I was actually looking, like I said, to buy property around there, but we will see. We will see. It's a spooky area, and they get some pretty rough winters. I started to look at their winter weather, and you're up in a mountainous area for the most part, so you're going to face some you're going to face some snow. You better have a very good vehicle or be prepared to be tied down for a while in your house, like The Shining is what I hear. So here we go. Vampires real? America says yes. Appalachia says definitely.
Townspeople still whisper the question, are vampires real? Deep in the old coal country of Pennsylvania sits the town of Shenandoah. And for more than a century, locals have sworn that something drained livestock in the night, left human bite patterns on fences, and stalked people on foggy roads. This wasn't Hollywood, it wasn't Romania, it was Appalachia. And the stories of real vampires in the United States go back to the 1890s. Old newspapers described pale miners who avoided sunlight after working deep underground, emerging with skin so white, people thought they were changed. And when tuberculosis...
Okay, that's creepy. I wonder if there's a disease that the miners can get or something can happen to them underground. Because that's the first thing I would think of. Tuberculosis, I'm sure there was tons of scares of vampires all throughout America. Edgar Allan Poe, some of his spookiest stories and some of his were inspired by, his own wife dying from tuberculosis, and this tuberculosis, pandemic, ripping through communities and destroying families, and it was pretty scary. And so you get a lot of scary horror stories that come out of that, and even the vampire. But it's spooky, this idea that people go down into the coal mines, and that's part of the environment, and then they come out like some corpse like vampire. Very spooky. I'm sure you could make a horror movie out of that. You could write a spooky story just out of that alone.
Tuberculosis swept the region. Families dug up the bodies of the dead because they believed the disease was spreading through American vampires feeding on the living. This was documented, photographed, and written about. It's one of the only places in the United States where vampire exhumations were recorded as fact. But here's where science cuts in.
Okay, I knew before we dispel, I knew the science was going to come in. But I do love the folklore, and science comes in ways in for the Romanian and the Hungarian vampire as well. There's a lot of myth. We talked about this on the show before, where, when they would dig up the vampire, it would look like the nails had grown and that there was fresh blood on the mouth, or that if they would stake it, it would moan, an audible moan. And there's, of course, scientific reasons for that they didn't understand about the body. So we're about to get into that territory, I suppose, about what the modern researchers found. And I don't know, it kind of dispels the spookiness, but it also takes away the fear, right?
Researchers found something strange in the mind's pockets of oxygen-poor air that cause hypoxia, hallucinations, and severe photophobia. Symptoms that made miners...
Okay, you know what's funny is photophobia is kind of what I get when I get migraines. Like my eyes can be sensitive to light. Maybe I'm a vampire. Y'all, it could be happening. If a light hits my eyes the wrong way, it will trigger a lot of times a massive, massive migraine headache. And it could be possibly because of photophobia. I actually researched that. So I don't know. Y'all, your host could be a vampire.
Look, move, and act exactly like the vampires locals feared. Their pupils dilated in daylight. Their skin turned ghostly. Their behavior changed. Science explained the symptoms, but not the sightings. Because decades later, hikers in that same region keep reporting the same figure. A tall, silent person with impossibly pale skin staring from the tree line, vanishing the moment they blink. And every time it happens, the search bar fills again with people asking, are vampires real? Here's the twist. In 2015, a research group studying abandoned mine ventilation set up thermal cameras in the exact area where those old exhumations happened. One of their recordings showed a human-shaped figure moving through a part of the mine system where oxygen levels were too low for any person to survive. Follow for more places where folk...
Okay. There's some spooky stuff about Pennsylvania. Do you remember? Okay, so that's spooky. But do you remember the town of Centralia? Isn't that in Pennsylvania? It's like that town that helped inspired what was that? What was that? It was like a video game, then a movie, and it's really spooky. It's like in a totally abandoned town. I'll figure out what it is. Silent Hill. I can't believe I forgot the name Silent Hill, but it too is a spooky little coal mine, ghost town where somehow something got lit. A fire got started. They were burning garbage or something, and a fire got started, and it burned under the coal mine, and it's just been burning underneath the whole town. The whole town is like filled with noxious gases. You can't, everybody evacuate. I think there might still be a few residents there. There was for a while, but everybody evacuated and had to leave because the town was essentially so toxic, and suddenly you could just be sitting there and boom, it could cave in, and you could cave into a sinkhole into the mines and like die. It's very dangerous, but and I think there was other towns as well and stories maybe from Japan that inspired Silent Hill. Go check it out online. Centralia, Pennsylvania. There's some spooky stories that are surrounded around Appalachia, the area, West Virginia, about vampires linked to the mines. It's so you'll find that in folklore, especially in vampires, that a lot of times the environment, most of the time, the environment really that you have to endure will create these creatures and monsters. And so that's why you get similarities, but variations. Panthera, welcome to the stream. Oh, Silent Hill game. They remake the games, and they doing a remake of the Fatal Frame, a horror Japanese game. Yeah, Silent Hill is a cool movie. I went a long time ago. I think it was before my son was even born, and seen it in theater, and it spooked me out. I certainly wouldn't want to be going to a town like that at all. No, thank you. And I don't think legally you're supposed to go there, but of course there's all these adventurers that adventure into Centralia. So there's lots of footage on YouTube that you can go check out of this kind of a ghost town that is literally still burning underneath. And there might even be a couple residents next, but still living there. But I mean, you would be probably exposed to the most noxious gases and toxins if you stayed there. And as far as I know, the fire underneath that town still burns to this day. Like they can't stop it from burning. So we're going to go for another tale of the Appalachian Vampire. A little bit different this time, if it will let me replace it. Not that Appalachian Vampire. So this one's a little bit longer, so we're going to be doing some pausing in between. Are there vampires in Appalachia? Someone in the comments here say they're not vampires. They're called strigoi. That is Eastern Europe. That is Romania. Strigoi, if that's what they're calling them, that's direct. That is a direct link to the people that came from Romania, Transylvania, to Appalachian, if they're using that word. 100%.
Appalachian Vampire is the original American vampire. Now, what people don't understand is in the 1900s, there were Romanian immigrants who came to the Appalachian Mountains because it reminded them very much of the Carpathian Mountains. And they brought with them this lore of vampirism. Now, this story comes out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina. There was a girl named Kira. Now, Kira said that she happened to be downtown one night with her friends, and they were at this nightclub. She said, she was dancing, having a good time, when out of the corner of her eye, she spots this man standing by the bar. And she said he had this beautiful curly brown hair, and he had bright blue eyes. And she said, he was just like almost perfect looking. Well, she said, when she was dancing with her friends and she was talking with them, all she could do was focus on this guy. Eventually, she said something was compelling her to go over and talk to him. So she walks over to this guy and she goes, "Hi, I'm Kira. How are you? Where are you from?" He doesn't say anything. She keeps trying to talk to him, but he's not speaking. So she goes, "You don't really talk that much." And this guy then proceeds to grab her hands. And she said when she felt his hands, they were ice cold. And as she looked upon his eyes, she said there was this blank stare. And she said it looked like he was empty inside. And right at that moment, she has this vision of a woman screaming, and this guy is chasing her. Well, all of a sudden, she kind of snaps out of it, and she backs up a little bit and is kind of freaked out now. This guy looks at her and says, "What do you think of me?" And she says, "Well, to be honest with you, I think you're a little creepy now." And he goes, "I'm sorry. I'm still trying to learn to be human." And she said the next thing she knew, she felt something telling her to go outside. So she started to walk out the front door. She goes down the road and she goes into this back alley. This guy follows her out. She said this guy came up right next to her, and next thing she knows, she's kissing this guy. And she said it was getting very passionate when all of a sudden he starts getting very aggressive. And she said he was grabbing her arm so hard he could feel the nails going into her skin.
Gonna do a little pause there so we don't get a copyright or anything, but there's a lot of stories. You always think it's gonna be New Orleans. There is a lot of stories attached to vampires in this Appalachian area. You'd actually be surprised.
And she said, at this point she became terrified and started freaking out when she hears her friends say, "Kara, are you all right? Is everything okay? What's going on?" She turns, she takes off running to her friends. She's all frantic. And she says, "This man I met at the bar, he was trying to attack me out in the alley." Her friends just kind of look at her like she's crazy. And she's like, "What are you, you don't believe me? There seriously was this guy." And they're like, "Kira, you were over by the bar alone. And you were talking to someone who there was no one there. And you walked out of the door alone. And you walked into the alley alone. There was no one with you." And she's like, "No, what are you talking about? He was there. He's real." And her friends are like, "Look, you've had too much to drink. We're going to take you back home so you can get some sleep." So she said she went home and she started to think, maybe it was me drinking too much. Maybe I just imagined this. Until she goes into the bathroom and she sees these scratch marks on her arm. Now, this next story takes place in Atlanta, Georgia. There was this man.
So we're gonna do a little pause before the next story. It sounds kind of like a little creepypasta story. I don't know. But we did have a show where I had Dennis on, and he's sort of like vampire folklore. He lives in this general area, and he talked about a vampire figure that he met in a graveyard, and it was a female. And I mean, I can't remember the exact details, but you can go check that out. I want to kind of get someone to come in here and talk about some vampire cults. There's a lot of them in New Orleans, so I want to definitely get into New Orleans. But this is it's a spooky story, but it kind of reminds me of a creepypasta story. But I've heard ghost stories like this where people meet someone in a cafe and their friends are like, come on. And they meet this stranger and they talk to him and they just get the sense that they know him. And then they leave and their friends were like, what are you doing? And they said, I was talking to this guy, so-and-so. And their friends are like, you weren't, there was nobody there. You were by yourself. That's kind of a trope, but I've heard actual people say this story again. So who's to say what's happening? Is there some kind of being? Is there something like some kind of vampire that can actually just psychically appear and attack you and go after you, but actually physically no one else can see them? Was it a psychic thing or is she crazy? I mean, you tell me in the comments what you think. We've got Jean saying in response to the Strigoi comment in the thing, whatever you call them, they will take you for a drink. Yeah, you can say vampires, Strigoi, the living dead. There's many words for them in different language. Vampire. Every culture has their own names for them. As long as you know what they do and what you're up against, you can. The first time I ever heard the word Strigoi was in Bram Stoker's 1992 Dracula movie. Was I 16, 17? 15. I was 15, so got a little bit of a European culture there. Folklore. Here we go. Let's hear about the tale in Georgia, which is also in Appalachia. The home of whatchamacallit? Deliverance. That was one intense movie, but it's also a crazy trope. So let's go here and listen to The Vampire of Georgia.
Named Marcus. Now, Marcus said that he grew up in sort of a bad part of Atlanta. And he said, he was in a lot of trouble and wasn't on the up and up. Well, he said this particular night, him and his group of friends, they're hanging outside of their house. They're listening to music. And he said it was probably about 11 o'clock. So that's when all of a sudden it just got eerily quiet. And he said the next thing he knows, they see this white guy walking down the block. They said just something seemed like really off with him, but also like this looked like a guy that wouldn't be in that neighborhood. So normally they would go up to him and they'd be like, hey, what are you doing in this part of town? And call him out and stuff. But they said they felt like they were in some sort of trance. And this guy makes it all the way to the driveway. He turns and he walks right up to them. And Marcus said he stopped, right next to him. And his eyes were fixated on this one guy who they called Shorty G. And they said this whole time as he stood there, he just was staring straight at Shorty G. Well, this guy walks over to Shorty G. He taps his face and he says, it's a nice night, isn't it? And he turns and he walks away. Well, after this guy leaves, Marcus and his friends are kind of like fighting amongst each other. Like, why didn't you say something? Why did you let him punk you? Like, what's going on? And this whole time, they said Shorty G is just standing there like something was bothering him. Like he was terrified or he'd seen something. And he said, the rest of the night, Shorty G didn't say anything. And then finally he said, you know what, I'm going to go home. Like, I'm going to leave. I'll catch you later. So he walks back to his house. And the next day, they're getting ready to all hang out. Shorty G doesn't show up. So they go to his grandma's house. They knock on the door. And the grandma's like, Shorty G never came home last night. I thought he was with you guys. And they're like, no, he said he was going home. For 3 days, they searched for Shorty G. They couldn't find him anywhere. And he said after about a week, they realized he was probably gone. And he said, at this time, they did not call the police.
Okay, because technically, if Shorty G is missing, you should call the police. Poor Shorty G. I wonder. Let's continue. Let's continue and see what happened.
They handled things on their own because they did not want the police in the area. So he said he never heard from Shorty G again. Now, this next story takes place.
I gotta pause that. Because you can't just have someone go missing. You can't just let Shorty G go missing and not report it to the police. Someone gonna come knocking looking for Shorty G. Do you guys buy this, that a vampire took him, or do you think something a little more ominous happened? Like why wouldn't you be calling the cops saying, hey, come help me with Shorty G? If you don't want the cops, I'm thinking there's something more going on here with Shorty G than a vampire. You guys, what do you say? Just sorry, but I don't care if I thought it was a vampire and he was missing. I'd be calling the cops for Shorty G. Just saying. There's no excuse not to call the cops.
In West Virginia, there was this girl named Caitlin. Caitlin said that her grandmother came over from...
This is a West Virginian story, by the way, if you missed that.
Romania. And she said she remembered this family story that when her grandmother was younger, her brother was unalived by someone and they never were able to figure out who did it. And she said they buried him in a local cemetery. Fast forward many years later, they said, that they wanted to bring this case back up and they found some new evidence. So when they went to bring up the body, they could not find one. And the grandmother said they never found out what happened to him. Well, fast forward now, her brother's daughter at the time, she now has a daughter. And her daughter was like 9 years old. Well, she's at home one night and her daughter goes into the kitchen and she said she sees this man standing next to the kitchen table. She said he had a brown hat. He had this brown jacket on with some, 70s looking jeans. And she said the guy looked at her and said, don't you recognize me? I'm your grandfather. He turned and then walked out the back door. Well, she runs into her mother's room and she's screaming. And she starts telling her mother, like, hey, someone was in the house. There was this guy and he was in the kitchen. And her mom's like, well, what did he look like? She starts describing him and instantly she starts crying because she goes, that was my dad. That was your grandfather that you've seen. And her grandmother always said that in her country, they believed that sometimes people would come back from the grave and they called them vampires. When we think...
Okay. That's the thing. Sometimes if we see somebody now from the grave, we think it's like an omen or they're visiting us. In their country, in the olden times, when somebody comes back from the grave, they're going to take the Christian notion maybe mixed with some paganism But you're not supposed to be able to do that. And if you do, you're trapped here. You're kind of damned, or you're some creature of the beyond. So you see, her grandmother was from Romania. And spooky to see that your husband could be the vampire. I don't believe that that necessarily means they're a vampire. I think you can communicate from beyond. I just think a lot of them don't understand the nature of the universe, which we kind of will get into some more on Wednesday nights. But this is the spooky vampire story. So John Carter, he's talking about Shorty G, and he says, definitely call the police for a missing person report, but I would probably leave the supernatural parts out. Yeah, just say, hey, Shorty G was here and now he's missing. Yeah, no creepy vampire. Just for the reason that they may not take it seriously. Yeah. Accuse you of filing a false report. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying it's almost like they made up the paranormal story and they're just covering because they know what happened to Shorty G. That would be my first suspicion. If someone ain't calling the cops for Shorty G, someone done Shorty G bad. Someone's not being good to Shorty G. That's all I can say. That's my suspicion right away. I'm like, conspiracy? Maybe. I don't know. But normal people call the cops. That's all I'm saying. Like, I would even just say, hey, look, he was down there with some guy and now he's missing and he hasn't come back. We're filing a missing persons report. Exactly. And then I wouldn't be like, hey, I thought it was a spook or a vampire or a zombie or something. Yeah, you can leave that part out. Very strange. Very strange phenomena. And it's just so interesting because I had never really thought about who lived in the Appalachian area, and it's a vast area. It's not like one small area. It stretches all the way down the United States through 13 different states. So you've probably got variation. We just heard about three different little vampire stories from 3 different states, and I just think something weird happened in Georgia. The devil came down to Georgia. Something weird happened with Shorty G in Georgia. I just can't get over that they didn't call the police. Even the whole fire in the sky, what's his name, who was abducted by the UFO. I know you all know the name. I'm just going dense. They called the police for him and filed a missing person report. And then he showed up like 5 days later. So there was no reason not to do Shorty G dirty and not call the cops. That is unacceptable, guys. I wonder if you typed in Shorty G, if it would come up. I'm typing in right. Let's see if we can find anything. Shorty G vampire missing. Okay, let's see. Okay, no. No, they think I'm looking for. Okay. Oh, we've got a Ohio man allegedly sacrificed by a vampire coven, but I don't see anything about Shorty G. Let's search. Apparently there was a WWE wrestler named Shorty G. There was a true crime story regarding a different person named George Philip Gull who disappeared in Dayton, Ohio in 1994 near a goth nightclub. A retired police officer later claimed rumors suggest that Gull was killed in an occult ritual leading to the Vampire Association in news reports. So there's that there is this report that somebody was killed in a weird satanic occult ritual, vampire ritual. But they might have called him Shorty G, but nothing under a Shorty G. So it was obviously a nickname, but there you go. Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky, that's who it was. Hunky John. Travis Walton, they reported him to the police missing. And of course the police thought they did it, but fortunately Travis showed up. Travis showed up a few days later and he was all like, hey, have I got a story for you? I don't know what you guys believe about the Travis Walton case, but that is it. Now I pulled up some videos. Let's go watch some videos on Centralia because it's spooky. It's a spooky story. It's not necessarily a vampire story, but it's a abandoned town story nevertheless. We'll do that, and then we will look at some more Appalachian vampires. Let's see. Okay, this one's actually better. It's going to keep in 2 vampires, and then we'll maybe look at a little Centralia because it's a spooky town, and since I mentioned it, we should visit that one. Let's go find her out. If I can find it. There we go. She's got a little tail. It's quick. Let's check it out and do a commentary here.
In Appalachia, some Appalachian folklore states that there was. In the 1890s, a European named Rupp moved to Big Stone Gap, Virginia. He was an introverted type fellow, so he liked to spend most of his time in his cabin in the middle of the woods. Soon, a lot of people started going missing in the town, as well as animal carcasses showing up drained of blood. Eventually, people started to think that this was Rupp that caused all of these disappearances and deaths, and they seemed to notice that all of the carcasses and disappearances were around the vicinity of his cabin. Finally, a group of brave and curious men decided to pay him a visit. Home when they arrived, but what they discovered disturbed. They tried to look through the windows, but they were really grimy and hard to see through, so one of the townsmen nudged the door open. What they discovered was human remains scattered all throughout the cabin, and the counters were covered in blood. Rupp was never seen again, but they say that his ghost still haunts the area around where his tiny cabin sat. And also, humans and animals are still known to disappear in the area to this day. So, was he a vampire? Or maybe just a serial killer? I don't know. See you later.
Okay. I'm going with serial killer. But it is spooky that he disappeared and no one ever found him. Maybe he took off into the mountains and had a terrible fate of his own. This is how this stuff gets started, where people don't want to go in the mountains because there's a psychopath in a cabin knocking people off and, Ed Gein style and all that stuff and scary stuff, and it lingers and it sticks. The vampire in the mountains of Virginia. You just never know. You never know what's going on in these mountains. And I mean, there's a lot of folklore about that. And the folklore comes from these people who become these reclusive psychopaths in the middle of the mountains, or like you get the stories like in Deliverance where they are looking for city people. You get that even with Transylvania, this whole trope of people from the city or from the town or from another country. They come into this wooded mountainous area and Dracula's waiting for them or something evil's waiting for them and they can't escape because they don't have the knowledge. It's like a fear of the city folk of these mountain people. And you get that the same with Deliverance. They come from Atlanta, Georgia. They're going for this weekend, doing this sort of canoeing thing, and it's not a good ending for anyone. Like it's pretty crazy. They come into the locals, and some crazy stuff happens. Very traumatic movie. Won't get into it. You can check it out. It's got Burt Reynolds in it. It's from the 70s. This is a good movie. Yeah, The Missing 411. Exactly. It's all, and you get this in all these regions, but there's something about Appalachia that really holds its hair. One of my favorite country, Loretta Lynn, is from Appalachia. She lived in Butcher Holler in Kentucky. That's where she's from. Her haunted mansion that she owned was in Tennessee. She built that in Tennessee, but she's originally from Butcher Holler in Kentucky. Maybe I can find a video of that. And we can take a look. I don't know if that's supposed to be haunted. I know she has passed away since. But I know she was from Appalachia. Let's see, what do we got here? Let's go down to screen. Let's get a little Butcher Hollow. Is there ghosts? Let's type it. Okay, Loretta Lynn's brother telling a ghost story. Let's check it out.
I go in there all the time, don't pay much attention to it. But one night I was in there, see, this is when I didn't believe it. And Hermeline, my daughter, I had a room fixed up on the side that she could practice music.
I actually can't really understand what he's saying. Let's check this one out. I've got to get something that's clear. See, one of the problems today is people like everything's so commercialized. They'll do like, oh, the spooky house, but it's not really haunted. When people are experiencing hauntings, it was like kind of real terrors back in the day. Like someone was murdering someone in cabins, or they were really experiencing something in the wilderness. Here's Butcher
Before
Holler.
she
Let's
was the
check it out.
coal miner's daughter, she was just Loretta Webb, one of 8 kids in a tiny Kentucky cabin. Do you know how far that dirt road carried her? Loretta was born in 1932 in Butcher Hollow, deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky. Her daddy, Ted Webb, worked long, dangerous shifts in the coal mines. Her mama kept the family running, cooking on a wood stove, sewing clothes from feed sacks, and raising a house full of children. Loretta grew up without running water, without electricity, but with music in her blood. She sang in church, on the porch, anywhere her voice could carry across the holler. At 13, she married Oliver Doolittle Lynn and moved to Washington State. By 18, she had 4 children. Life was hard. Sometimes there wasn't enough to eat. But
Okay. I am 13 is just so young. I'm trying to let's see if this is a better
I go in there
one.
all the time, don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah, no, that's not good. They you can barely hear what he's saying, and then they add the music on top of it. So it's really hard to hear what he's saying, but he's talking about ghosts of Butcher Holler. So I don't doubt that they're there. I don't doubt at all. Let's see what this one. Here we go. Historic and haunted Kentucky, Appalachia.
Kentucky.
Let's go.
Part 2. A state known for bourbon, bluegrass, and horse racing. But beneath the rolling hills and southern charm lies a much darker history. Let's explore a few of the most mysterious places in the bluegrass state. First up, the land between the lakes. This massive stretch of wilderness is home to chilling legends, including the tale of the beast of LBL. Locals whisper about a half-man, half-wolf creature said to stalk campers.
Very vampire-like. Vampires transform into things. They don't just stay a static human. They'll transform into a wolf in mist. And some people say they see them as a slug. This one girl was talking about a story where it appeared almost like a slug-like thing that drained your energy in the Appalachians.
And hunters. There are even stories of entire families found mysteriously torn apart. Their killer was never identified. Next, the Campbell House in Lexington, built in 1951. This historic hotel has a reputation for paranormal activity. Guests report hearing footsteps in empty hallways, seeing shadow figures, and even feeling unseen hands tug at their clothes. It's said a woman was murdered here years ago, and her restless spirit still wanders the halls. In Franklin, the Octagon Mansion is a Civil War relic and a hotspot for ghostly encounters.
I wonder if there was any kind of Civil War vampire stories, because the Civil War, and I've talked to many people who live in areas where the great battles happen, and the paranormal and the haunting and the intensity in those areas there's something else. It's something I would like to go to in these areas, and maybe even do a reenactment or watch one and stay in the area, because people will tell you and they will swear that the ghostly happenings. I wonder if there's anything beyond a ghost there. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be surprised if you couldn't find it.
During the war, it served as a hospital, where countless soldiers suffered and died. Today, visitors claim to hear faint cries of agony, the clatter of phantom boots on the stairs, and doors opening on their own, as if the war never truly ended. And finally, the legendary Pope Lick monster. This creature is said to be part man, part goat, lurking beneath a railroad trestle outside Louisville. According to legend, it uses hypnosis or mimicry to lure victims onto the tracks, where they meet a grisly fate. From haunted hotels to Civil War spirits and monsters that stalk the night, Kentucky's haunted history runs deep.
Kentucky's haunted history. So the one character was very vampiric-like, but I'm sure every area is going to have these spooky stories. Remember, we are dealing with literally the Carpathians of North America, right? So I kind of looked up this idea of a Civil War vampire. And the only thing I can find is like a fictional reinterpretation. They're saying the Confederate vampire trope reveals how America's fascination with the Civil War has evolved over time, transforming Confederate soldiers from lost heroes into brooding, romanticized immortals who navigate consequences of their past. This trope often combines Southern Gothic elements with Civil War romance narratives, blurring the line between villain and victim, predator and protector. So, they're using Gone with the Wind. In Gone with the Wind, Margaret Mitchell presents the Civil War area South as a complicated yet beautiful place. Okay. Also, they use Interview with the Vampire. You get this vampire, although it's not the Civil War, it's still like a Southern vampire from New Orleans moving all the way to San Francisco in the modern world. Interesting take on it. She gives True Blood. Of course, the Confederate vampire. It's the Suki Stackhouse series. I was never big into that, but it's like this Southern vampire sort of trope. They're dealing with it in that one. Twilight. Does it? It's kind of like a... Oh yeah, Jasper Hale. One of the characters is in Twilight. Echoes of the Civil War, The Vampire Diaries. You know, the Vampire Diaries deal with it. It's a big trope that happened with these sort of Southern Civil War vampires, that the South is full of vampires. And I think that comes from these tales and from this influence, that there was this Eastern European influence in that Southern area. So they're saying from idealization of the antebellum South to portrayals of regretful, remorseful vampires, these characters serve as conduits for exploring themes of identity, redemption, and historical memory. They remind us of the complexities of the past and challenge us to confront the myths and realities of Southern heritage. Well, I don't think you have to confront it. A lot of these things, maybe she doesn't know, is because the South was heavily influenced by Romanian culture, because a lot of them immigrated there and they would have brought their stories and their folklore. It's appropriate. And also, when you go to New Orleans, you're dealing with the Haitians, the Voodoo, you're dealing with Acadians and the French that are there. It's just this mixture melting pot. And I'm sure all of them have not only their zombie stuff, but they're also going to be influenced by a lot of vampire. And I think most of the vampire cults that are in New Orleans right now are probably heavily, heavily influenced by Anne Rice and her book, Interview with the Vampire, in the series that follows. So it's a fascinating kind of look at the evolution of the vampire in the South, particularly Appalachian. And it comes from these stories of haints and haunts. It comes from the folklore and the traditional people over in Romania that came over, similar to how the Irish bring over their folklore. And you can see it evolving. And then we got modern literature showing more Southern vampires and, the Kentucky Bourbon. And John Connor says, Bill Compton, Confederate soldier and vampire. Didn't they have that Abraham Lincoln vampire killer thing going on? I've never watched that. Yeah, John Asai just mentioned, as soon as I mentioned it, Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter, the whole slave trade was for the Southern vampire to feed. I think that's a terrible thing to say. I think that is so terrible. Um that is almost propaganda in my opinion. Wow, that is so crazy. That was absolutely crazy. Wow, talk about, yeah, that's just that almost feels like propaganda to me against the South. I think it's a lot more complicated than that, and I think you can look at you could probably write a story and criticize the North just as much. I don't think they tell us history properly, but that seems like right out a little bit crazy to refer to the South that way. A little bit too much for me. Maybe I won't watch it. Maybe I will. I do love me the Interview with the Vampire. Favorite book is The Vampire Lestat, the second one, which they did not make into a movie. They chose Queen of the Dam instead, and they chose a different actor. The new series on Amazon, not that good. It's just, yeah, not. I just watched the original movie and then I would read the book, read The Vampire Lestat. It's really good. Tells you how Lestat became the vampire over in the old world. There's this thing we always forget, the old world. Read the book. That's good stuff. The old world is so influential. And Anne Rice brings this up in her novel of the old world coming over here. That's what Lestat is. He's from France and he's over in New Orleans escaping his history, and so nobody knows him, nobody knows how he became a vampire. Louise and Claudia have no idea. He just vampirizes them, and they're trying to figure out his past, right? And because they're in the new world, they're the new baby vampires, and they're trying to figure out what coven he came from. They want to know all the rules and ask the questions, and he's got all the information from the old world. So there's this interesting thing going on there with his fascination with the old world and bring in the old world some of the habits and the beliefs and the tales over. You see it repeating in a lot of these stories. So very fascinating stuff. Appalachian Vampire. I'm going to end here with I'm going to do a tarot card. I forgot to do it yesterday. I'm going to draw a tarot card. We're going to see what it represents for the day. But I want to look at Centralia because it's fascinating. We're going to check it out and have a look at what Centralia looks like now for people who have it. I mean, you can look it up yourself, but we might as well spend a few minutes having a look at Centralia, Pennsylvania.
Can you imagine there is a town in the U.S. that has been fire for 60 years and will continue to burn for another 250? Welcome to Centralia. Centralia is a small town located in the heart of Pennsylvania's coal region and is dotted with numerous coal mines. Every year before Memorial Day, the town burned all the trash in a landfill, but in 1962, a fire spread into a nearby mine. Attempts to extinguish the fire were unsuccessful, and it expanded into a vast network of underground coal mines. The fire spread to a depth of 300 feet and across 4,000 acres where flames burst out of the ground, releasing toxic gases, and houses began to fall into the ground. In 1984, Congress allocated more than $42 million to relocate residents, and most people left their homes. Today, Centralia is a ghost town. Since 2002, the zip code has been removed, and Highway 61, which ran through it, is blocked off and covered with tons of dirt to prevent attracting tourists. The fire will burn there for at least another 250 years. Can you imagine there is a...
Okay, now let's go see the actual town. Because people have been there and they're showing you what's there. I wouldn't recommend it. You're going to get toxic gases, sinkholes. Like you could literally be walking down the street and then you just collapse into the burning fire.
Most towns fade slowly. Centralia didn't. It caught fire and never stopped burning. In 1962, a landfill fire slipped into an abandoned coal.
Okay, we already know that. We want some... Yeah, here's the road.
This is Graffiti Road, a cracked and colorful stretch of pavement in the abandoned town of Centralia, Pennsylvania. The reason it's empty, well, the entire town has been on fire since 1962. A routine trash burn at the town dump ignited an underground...
Okay, yeah, we know that. I want them to show us it. Okay, here. This guy's going.
And eventually, the ground caved in. The fire got down into the mines. I thought somebody was standing over there. Freaked me out for a second. I think it's a stack. No, yeah, so around
Okay, this is Grim Life, and he just got spooked.
Online about they called them the devil stacks, and there's one straight ahead. I thought it was a person looking at me. It's a devil face. That's kind of cool. So let's go take a look at that. That's creepy. Yeah. Walking over this way, I can already smell it in the air. It's very faint, but there's a certain, yeah, look at that. There's one right there on the right-hand side of the screen and one on the left-hand side of the screen. These are the old ventilation shafts. They call them the devil stacks. Look at this. Somebody painted on it. They wrote,
He thought
the
that was a
road
person.
rattler. The devil with a pentagram on its face. And the word Dark Lord. Oh, wow. Now that's something else. So as I was saying, the firefighters, the volunteer firefighters were cleaning everything up and burning, and they thought the fire was out. And the ground eventually gave way. The fire was still burning, got down in the mines, and it still burns to this day. I want to touch it. I want to touch it.
Touch it.
It's warm, but I think it's just warm from the sun. Crazy, right? If I walk around, you can see how gnarly that fence is.
Does he even go? Let's see if he goes to the city. Because I don't want to look at the post the entire time. He doesn't.
I thought it was a rock, not.
I think it's really hard to get in there now. I'm trying to find this probably in the 90s. There's still people there. Oh, that's not it. That's Centralia, Washington. That's dishonest. Let's see if we can get some more footage here.
They didn't just abandon Centralia, Pennsylvania. They let. By the 1980s, Centralia.
It's all AI. Nobody has given us the real thing. So that one was Centralia, Washington. I'm trying to find like some actual footage because there is video footage. Maybe if we go to YouTube, we can find it. A little clip of it because there is definitely footage of Centralia. And people have broken in there because I've seen it before. We don't want the full documentary. We just want a little short clip to see if somebody... There we go. Sound effects. It's kind of annoying. Turn that down because that's really annoying. So this is some of the scenes from Centralia. I just don't like that they're doing the alarm that happens. Jonaside says, not to brag, but I've been to Centralia, Washington. Now I gotta check it out. So that's a little clip of it. Let's see if here. Now this is the road that goes into it. They've got it all graffitied up. It's like I said, there might be 5 people left in the town, and I don't think they really let new people in. I don't know how they would even get out.
This is a Christmas gift, kid.
Oh, let's not play that because it's that person's music. But you get the point. There's a whole documentary on it. We've got it right here. I'll give you guys the link. You can check it out. It's kind of spooky. It's really sad because there's people who still just, they don't want to leave where they grew up. They just don't want to abandon Centralia. I put the link for the documentary on Centralia in the chat. It's super interesting, fascinating story. But you know what? We're done with the Appalachian ghost stories. I'm sure we'll be going back there again. we have, a lot of guests I'm trying to book up and talk about different things, but it's tarot card drawing time to finish off the story. So I'm going to shuffle until my hand says don't shuffle anymore. You can just feel it. Oh, there it is. Oh, darn. 8 of Swords. This person looks very imprisoned by these swords. It doesn't look good. Don't go to Centralia. That's all I'm saying. This card's like, don't go, girl. Don't do it. Don't be going where you're going to get sinkholes and fall into fiery pits from below. It's not going to stop burning for another 250 years. You be trapped. You go to Centralia and stay away from them vampires. Your soul gets trapped in a turmoil of swords. Swords is... They're very warlike in action, so... John Connor says, this is called extreme sightseeing for those who visit Centralia, just like visiting Pripyat, Ukraine, which is next to, Chernobyl. You're saying, it's next to Chernobyl. Well, there's this really cool documentary out there for anyone interested called The Babushkas of Chernobyl. And I don't know what happened now because Ukraine is obviously war-torn, but these old ladies refused to leave one of the immediate areas after the Chernobyl disaster. It was one of the zones, and they literally go in all the time and make sure these ladies are okay, and they're doing their own gardening, and they refuse to live. And they're old. They're probably passed on by now. But they're staying there because their cemetery's there. All their dead and buried relatives are there. Her dead son was there. She will not leave them. She won't leave them. And there's a few other ones. And just the stuff that they go through. It was a crazy 8 of Swords. It's a good documentary, but it's a little bit crazy. So bad news, violent chagrin, crisis, censure, power in trammels, conflict, clammy. Yeah. That's Centralia. They're telling us, don't go unless you want a sinkhole. I mean, it would be hard to even get in. You don't want to do that extreme sightseeing in that way because the fire, it's going to be burning for another 250 years underneath that town. It is not going to stop anytime soon. And don't mess with the vampires. Remember what he said. Don't look out your window. If you're in these mountain areas, don't go. If anybody's calling your name, if you hear a woman crying or screaming for help in the woods, in the middle of nowhere where there shouldn't be people, I'm not saying don't help someone. Be aware. Could be some kind of cougar or something. There's all sorts of warnings that in folklore that are actually based on reality. And that's the same thing with vampire folklore. So I hope you guys enjoyed that show on the Appalachian Vampire. And of course, prayers for Mikey Pelly and his father Brian and their family up in Kenora, Ontario. We will be doing a show on Sunday, the 14th, then another one possibly on Thursday, and then we'll be doing a show on the 21st, the Winter Solace, and I'll be taking a little break till after January. And I will, while I'm on that break, I'll make sure to line up a bunch of guests for January and February. Panthera said, Bunny Man, try to get lights out shows on YouTube. Cool. So check those things out. Centralia, Appalachian Ghost Stories, the book, Joseph McGonigal for remote viewing. He's got a couple good books. He's the master. It says here, it's not simply the use of psychic ability or ESP to obtain information. It is also scientific protocol to develop and extend the abilities. So like I said, there's a lot of logic going on here. It's not just woo. So Joseph McGonigal, check him out. And I thank you guys so much. And remember to subscribe. Oh yeah, I will definitely be getting Walter and Todd back on. 100%. I may even go on California again at some time in the future. Light Out. That's called Light Out, a YouTube channel. yeah, I'll probably be going in. I'll definitely get them back on, and we can talk about the strange and unusual stuff. It's super fun when they come on. I want to get guests on about ghostly haunted bar. I want to get guests on about Atlantis and all sorts of things, and I want to keep talking about spiritual energy stuff. I want to get more into that, and maybe energy work, healing, making our lives and our country lighter somehow. If I can contribute, I will. But I want to thank you guys. Remember, subscribe, thumbs up on this episode before we tie out. Visit the website, melissadonharris.com, for all the links to subscribe. Right now, we actually aren't streaming to Rumble, so it's acting up a little bit. But I thank you guys all for joining me tonight, and I will see you on Sunday.